Language. It's as if each one of us would be given a box, and we would refer to the thing that's in the box as a beetle. But we can never peek into other people's boxes, and neither can they peek into ours. So when we talk about beetles, how do we know that we are talking about the same thing? In fact, how do we know that other people's boxes aren't empty? In that case, they would be, as David Chalmers would call them, philosophical zombies, an empty shell without consciousness. This is known as the problem of other minds, which has been raised by skeptics ages ago, and it can be stated as the following question. Given that I can only observe the behavior of other people, how can I never know that others have minds of their own? One radical solution to this problem is called solipsism. Only my own consciousness exists. I am alone in this universe. No matter how sophisticated someone's behavior is, that does not imply the presence of mentality. I am surrounded by empty boxes, so to speak. It's just me. Hello, I am God. The mathematician and computer scientist Alan Turing raises the following consideration. If an artificial intelligence, for example, would pass the Turing test, why would we still suppose that it doesn't have a consciousness if, on the other hand, judging the behavior of people, we do suppose that they have a mind of their own? As the behaviorist B.F. Skinner puts it, the real question is not whether machines think, but whether men do. The mystery surrounding a thinking machine already surrounds a thinking man. Now this problem naturally extends to language. Suppose the boxes are not empty and we ditch this radical skepticism about other minds. Still, how do we ever know that we are talking about the same things when we talk about the things that are in the box? Things like love, terror, pain, happiness. When I say pain, I refer to a sensation that I feel. But when someone else feels pain, they are talking about something that they are feeling. I can't peek into their mind and check what pain is like for them. I can only judge from their behavior. But again, just because someone acts in a way, that doesn't imply that they have that particular sensation in their mind, that they're actually feeling that. So when we talk about feelings, should we just suppose that others share the same mental phenomena as us? Well, that answer shouldn't satisfy us. Short story. In 2016, an American software engineer, also known as the co-creator of Mozilla Firefox, Blake Ross, published an essay that gained quite some attention. And to quote a paragraph that summarizes the essay quite well, he says that the following: I have never visualized anything in my entire life. I can't see my father's face or a bouncing blue ball, my childhood bedroom or the run I went on 10 minutes ago. I thought counting sheep was a metaphor. I'm 30 years old and I never knew a human could do any of this. Ross has found out that he is suffering from a condition called aphantasia or aphantasia. No, aphantasia probably. A condition where one does not possess a functioning mind's eye and cannot visualize imagery voluntarily. Now, interesting in those cases is the fact that many people never realize that they lack something that other people possess in their mental world. As Ross describes it, they suppose other people just talk in metaphors. And that goes in the other way around as well, in the condition called synesthesia, where a person talks about a day being long, but they don't mean that metaphorically. They actually visualize the day as being long. Both of these cases are very hard to imagine to someone that has neither condition. On YouTube you can find many discussions with people that report to have one or either of those conditions. So if you got intrigued, just like I did, you should go check it out.
Or if somebody like Me, who a week ago found out people see pictures in their head and they're not a crazy person in a movie.
But the point of this video is that since those conditions did get quite some scientific attention, we have gathered quite a lot of empirical evidence to support the claim that our boxes differ. What does love or empathy mean to a psychopath? How could we ever hope to be understood by a person whose sensations of the world differ from ours? In this sense, language is a kind of private thing. We use it to describe sensations that we feel, mental phenomena that we experience. Only I can feel this pain. Now, the idea of private language in philosophy was introduced by Ludwig Wittgenstein in his major work, Philosophical Investigations, and he explained it like that. The words of this language are to refer to what only the speaker can know, to his immediate private sensations. So another person cannot understand the language. In high school, I had a classmate who kept a diary, but it was full of weird symbols that no one has ever seen before and didn't know what they stand for. So because of that, he was able to keep his diary open in front of all of us on his desk, and whatever. We can't understand it. Was he trolling us? Probably. But the point is that this is not the way to imagine a private language. This is just transcribing or recording someone's personal experience in a personal code, which, however obscure in fact, could in principle be deciphered. What Wittgenstein had in mind is a language conceived as necessarily comprehensible only to its single originator, because the things that define it are necessarily inaccessible to other people. Our boxes are closed, no one can peek inside of them. With this idea, Wittgenstein led to the formulation of a skeptical challenge, also known as the Wittgenstein's paradox. Now, I have made a video on this, so if you got intrigued, you can check it out. But it can be formulated as the following question. When communicating with other people, how could we ever truly verify that we are talking about the same thing? Now, here it's worth mentioning that for Wittgenstein himself, language is essentially social. Just like chess is essentially a game that you play with someone else, although you can practice it alone, both chess and speaking, like I have to sometimes. In fact, Wittgenstein formulated the idea of private language just so he could reject it in the end. And we can understand why he did that through the notion of intersubjectivity. Cognitive sociologists often state that humans subscribe to certain thought communities. They argue that each thought community shares social experiences that are different from the social experiences of other thought communities, creating differing beliefs among people who subscribe to different thought communities. These experiences transcend our subjectivity, which explains why they can be shared by the entire thought community. Proponents of intersubjectivity support the view that individual beliefs are often the result of thought community beliefs, not just personal experiences or universal and objective human beliefs. Now compare that with language. I can choose that I will call every piece of furniture a chair. But being part of a linguistic community, I will be pressured to omit my use of the word chair to the things that other people call chair. Through the associative play of words, members of a linguistic community constantly pressure each other to use expressions when it is deemed appropriate. So, in other words, the way in which we map words to ideas gets constantly regulated by the people around us. Although people around us can't peek into our mind, the context in which we state some internal affair is often enough for them to make out what we mean. One day we have become part of a linguistic community. When we talked about language games in the last episode, we said that for Wittgenstein, language is a way of life, and it's exactly language being a part of an activity that gives meanings to the words we use. Yes, we can't know for sure that when I and you say love, we mean exactly the same thing, but sharing the same way of life, being part of a community, a culture, a worldview, a civilization, sharing more or less the same psychological and biological constitution, maybe we can have some confidence that at least for the most things that we are talking about the same things. Yes, perhaps not all of them. Perhaps the person you are talking to has a mind's blind eye or synesthesia, or is a psychopath or a machine. Still, reacting appropriately to the words we use, we do have reason that the people around us have understood us correctly. It's important to note that our minds aren't closed off completely from other people. Of course, we can be deceived, but that doesn't mean that we can't feel the emotions of other people. Psychopaths give themselves away by failing to mimic the appropriate micro-expressions for compassion. You would feel that they don't understand what we are talking about when we are talking about love. As the French phenomenologist Merleau-Ponty put it, imagine that I am in the presence of someone who for one reason or another is extremely annoyed with me. My interlocutor gets angry and I notice that he is expressing his anger by speaking aggressively, by gesticulating and shouting. But where is this anger? People will say that it is in the mind of my interlocutor. What this means is not entirely clear, for I could not imagine the malice and cruelty which I discern in my opponent's looks separated from his gestures, speech and body. None of this takes place in some otherworldly realm, in some shrine located beyond the body of the angry man. It really is here, in this room and in this part of the room that his anger breaks forth. It is in the space between him and me that it unfolds. Poetry to my mind. Perhaps it's time to drop this Descartesian notion of the complete separation of mind and body. Are the movements of the body, the expressions of face and the tone of voice not a language on itself, one not tied by the conventions of society but by natural laws, and as such it reflects the state of mind by necessity? Are we souls levitating somewhere in the heavenly ether, or are we embodied minds, and as that our bodies are open books ready to be studied? Can we ever close ourselves off completely from other people? Can we ever achieve total privacy? What do I know? I'm just a boy with I'm just a boy with back problems. Okay.